Welcome everybody. And I'm so happy that you're back. I don't know if I have to do this like whole wave thing, but okay, I'm glad that you caught up. Okay, so we're gonna catch everybody up because it feels, even though it was 1 week, it feels like a month in between. Because like with the kids coming home from camp, like in between. Okay, so what we're gonna try to do today is we're gonna try to do chapter 16 and 17. We ran through 1 through 15, but I'll just briefly catch us up. Okay, so now Vital, right? Okay, Vital. Okay, we're good. I'm like, I have two names here. Okay, so let's go back all the way to the beginning. We'll run through 1 through 15 as fast as we can, but if you have questions, stop me. And also, we discussed last week in length 15, but we're going to review it now with 16. Okay, so chapter 1, we said that, what was chapter 1? Chapter 1 is that we took an oath, what? Tzaddik, right? Yeah, tzaddik below Rasha. That you should be a tzaddik and you should not be a Rasha. And then we were introduced to this concept of a Benoni, of a person who is similar to a tzaddik but has insides like a Rasha, always tries to overcome it. So that was number 1. Chapter 2, we discussed, I'm like looking, she is the neshama, right? And what? Hashem is unraveling himself, right? So we have a neshama. What is a neshama? Neshama is not something we can see. It's actually Hashem who unraveled himself, basically, that we have those kohos, and we have how many kohos do we have? How many soul powers do we have? 3. Well, we have
3 emotional.
3 intellectual. 3 intellectual, 7 emotional, and then we also explain, and by the way, the reason why I'm reviewing this is because when we get to 16 and 17, we're going to reference a lot of these chapters. We're going to reference, for sure, 2, 3, and 4, okay? So just, you'll have it like chazara. So then chapter 2, we explain that you have these kohos, and that there are 3 intellectual, and then 7 emotional, and then we explain who gives birth to who. The intellect gives birth to your. I know so long ago. I know you're also jet lag. It's fine. The 3 intellects give birth to the 7 emotional, and then we explained with that you have bechira, you have free will. If you can take your mind over your emotions, as long as you harness the chachma, bina, and das, you take the chachma and bina, and through das, through focusing, through marriage, through a relationship, a mother and a father can give birth and create emotions. So that means that you're not just an emotional wreck, even though sometimes we are, like these few weeks, but we're not emotional wrecks because we know that we have free will. We know that there is this concept that we have intellect and we have intuition, and when we focus that and we harness it, the things that we think about will give birth to our emotions, and that gives us free will. And that also gives us the ability to, not just free will, but to be able to meditate to the point where you can create emotions, which is what we're going to get to in 16 and 17, okay? Then we spoke about the fact that the soul didn't just come down here without anything. Hashem gave the soul food and clothes, right? So the clothing, levushim, are our thoughts, our speech, and our action. That's the way that the soul can interact in this world. And then we also said that not only do they have clothing, but it also has food, which is Torah. The clothing is your mitzvos, and the food is the Torah, and that's what you eat. You have this concept where once you ingest Torah, that affects everything. It affects your actions, your thought, and your speech. Okay, then we spoke about this concept that there's Ra in this world, that there's, then we moved on to the animal soul. And we said that the animal soul has the same things as the godly soul. Oh, we didn't talk about the 2 souls. I forgot. That was also chapter 2, that you have 2 souls. Sorry. You have a nefesh Bahamis. You have an animal soul, which came to you first. And then later on, you got a nefesh Elokis. And that nefesh Elokis is much more related to what Hashem wants. And the animal soul is much more what the body wants. But then we said that neither of them are bad. We explained that there's no such thing as bad. It's referred to as, what's the word that we used for bad? A vocabulary word? Sitra achra. Yes, which is the other side. It means that it's not something that's tethered to Hashem. If the things that I'm eating, I make a bracha and I connect it back to Hashem, then that's nefesh elokis. But if it's just eating because I'm starving and my body's so hungry and I'm going to pass out, whatever, then it's nefesh bahamis. So what do? I take the nefesh bahamis. I say, I know I need to feed you. I'm going to make a bracha on this food. I'm going to uplift it. And now that was a holy experience. I'm going to bench on it. I'm going to make a bracha on it. You could do that with clothing. You could do that with food. You could do that with your house. You could do that with a lot of things. And then when we obviously some people get out of control, but as long as it's in context, okay? So you need to feed your nefesh habahamis, and you need to take care of your nefesh elokis. Your nefesh elokis only wants to connect to Hashem. Your nefesh habahamis only wants to connect down to this world. So you have to find a compromise in between. Know that you have twins inside of you. You have these two drives inside of you. One has to always conquer the other, and that is what the goal of the Benoni is. Then we explain this concept of Ra, of bad, but there is no such bad. It's Sitra Achra. Everything here has godliness. All you have to do is peel off the klipas. By the way, the song came out. I'll send it to you. I'll put it on the chat. Peel off the klipas and reveal the pneumius. So we spoke about different klipas. Some klipas are very, very thick and very, very difficult. And Hashem says basically you don't have to go there. That's a coconut. That's shellfish. That's not kosher food. That's a lobster. That's ishasish. Those are like wrong things that you're not allowed to do. Hashem says don't peel off those klipas. Things that you can, that you could, that are accessible, and you should do that. So those are klipas. The clearest klipa we explained was a klipas noga, which is like almost like see-through, like the grape. Okay, thicker would be an orange, even thicker would be a coconut. But there are different levels of klipas, and some of them are easier. Some of them you find within yourself, some of them you find with other people, some of them you find within experiences. But this whole world is covered in klipas. By the way, last night, this is just a random tangent thought. I had a Neshe event with Rabbi Yossi Zaktinsky, and he was saying this thing about there's not just klipas. There's klipas on everything, but he said there's also a klipa of the heart. That you have to remove a klipa of your heart during the month of Elul in order to get ready for Rosh Hashanah. So what's a klipa of the heart? So sometimes our heart is our emotion. So sometimes we guard ourselves, right? We put up a guard. You put up like something. So he's like, over the month of Elul, we need to remove the klipa of the heart. So I just thought it was interesting. I was like, oh, we hear all these words like klipas, and we think it's like, food, and we think it's like, all that stuff. But it's all inside of us. We have our own klipas. So we have to remove that. Then we gave this example of, then we spoke about Sitra Achra, we spoke about Klipas, we spoke about Ra, we spoke about a city, we gave a mashal of a city with two kings, right? There was and who's going to rule the city. Then chapter 10, we spoke about the tzaddik, and there's two types of tzaddik the tovlo, tzaddik the ralo, tzaddik that is totally amazing and flipped his Yitzhak, flipped his Yitzhahara, and then there's a tzaddik that just is able to control it. Then we spoke about the Rasha Viralo, Rasha the Tovlo, and then ultimately we have a Benoni who really just learns to use melatonin and put its nefesh habahamis to sleep. But we explained you can't put it to sleep forever, because if you put it to sleep forever, maybe you're in Israel then, if you put it to sleep forever, then you're a tzaddik. But if he just lays dormant there, then he could come up any point. So you could be going 10 years of air free, and then all of a sudden he comes up in he's very, very good at it. He's very, very good at it, and he'll come up and he'll scare you and he'll get you. So you have to just be careful, okay? So then we spoke a little bit more, so that was 12 through 15, and then last class we spoke about two types of Beinonim. Was that last week? Where we spoke about an Eved and an Ovid. Yeah, so there are two types of Beinonim. One that has it just easier, like the kid, I don't know, maybe it's your 5-year-old, I'm not sure. It's definitely not that other one. No, none of them. And then some people just have that. Like all their children, and all of them are like that it's just easy. I mean, trust me, I was in Adventureland yesterday, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I know exactly who are all the people who are struggling and who are not. Like you see it. Some kids who are patiently waiting on lines, and then there are kids on the floor flat out having literal tantrums, throwing drinks, water, whatever. Kids who are too short can't go on rides. This is always my kids' problems. They can't go on rides. Bina finally hit like 54 inches, and it's like 42, 48, and 54. Like if you want to go on any ride, so she was able to go on everything. So there are those kids that just don't struggle as much, or adults that don't struggle so much, and then there are adults that do struggle a lot. So we explained at the end that the person who doesn't necessarily struggle, I think it was actually Faigy Rosenberg was like, but maybe they're not as passionate, which is true. They're not maybe as passionate. So what they need to do, and we learned from Tanya, is they need to push themselves a little bit more to get to a point of like, wow, this is uncomfortable. And once it hits uncomfortable, that's when the emotions start to boil out. Okay. We also spoke about our first tool. Remember the first tool that we said that was given to us in Tanya? Sha'alit al-halim, right? I know. So it's like your brain ruling over your heart, which is the first tool, and it's also something that we really learned a while back, right? Because we learned in chapter 3 that if you could control we said that your emotions are, where do you go to emotions? Like what's the emotion factory? When you go to the emotion factory and you want to get an emotion, you have to it really stems from here, because we explained that your intellect gives birth to emotions, as opposed to your emotions giving birth to intellect, which would be the kids ruling the home. I'm going to Steve & Buster's, I'm going to Adventureland, I'm doing, all this stuff, whatever. Then it shifts from Adventureland to I'm going to Central, I'm going to Fame, which I don't know if that's worse, because I'm you'll probably spend more on Central Avenue. Right. So this idea where emotions come from the intellect is not something new. We know that. So now we're saying, what's the tool? Let your brain rule over your emotions. Even if your emotions want to fight, your intellect says, no, I'm going to control you. I'm going to put a lid on it. So we also explained last week that that's great. That's a great skill set. I know that bottom line, if I need to control myself, I can. It's innate. It's self-control. It's like I could yell at my kid in my house, but not in the street. I'm not going to do that. Although eventually I'm like, push my buttons a little bit yesterday. They have these like cups that you buy for $20 and you get free refills. And then it's like, but who in the family gets the cup? Like, do I buy it for everybody or do we share it? But like he's sick and then my other son's allergic. He was eating bama. So I'm like, fine, I caved. I'm like, we'll get 2, right? And then it's like, no, but we really need 3. So it's like, but I could put a lid on it. I could say, no, it's fine. We can control ourselves. It's going to be hard, but we can control ourselves. Now the problem is when you close the soda cap so tight, what happens? It bursts. Eventually it'll burst. And you could say, I will be the firmest, best, most tznius, most calm, most patient, whatever, because I have the ability to control my impulses. But at a certain point, I'm going to snap. And not only am I going to snap, my Yiddishkeit is it's gonna say, what is this? Like all I have to do is serve Hashem with my intellect, and even if I don't like it, I can serve Hashem. Fine, I get that, but to a certain degree, like how long am I gonna be walking around with this tight soda? Right? I can't because I'm going to burst. So Hashem says, how do I also serve Hashem? So Tanya explains, how do I also serve Hashem through my emotions? I don't want to only serve Hashem with my intellect. You understand? So he gives us another tool. And what's that? And that's what we're going to be learning now in 16 and 17. That's a tool called Mal Shalit Al-Alev. But version 2. Okay, there's 2 versions. There's version A, which is impulse control. Control yourself. Faigy, you really want to say Lashon Hara? You know that it's not going to go anywhere good, even though it feels good to say it. But if I can control it, I just controlled it. And the more I get used to controlling it, the better I'll get at it. But I'm also going to be resentful. And it's not so attainable, right? Like, think about girls. Let's say when they're in school, right? Everything is attainable when you're in school because you have to. Okay, fine. So if I have to, I do it. And then, like, you leave it, and then you're like, oh, I'm free. That's unfortunately reality. Those are people who are struggling with Yiddishkeit because maybe they only saw it in a way that was so Mashal Talev, only impulse control. Repression, right? It's like real repression. It's a very achi feeling. I don't want to get controversial now, but like, I think that you're able to see those people who struggle with Yiddishkeit. I'm not going to say that it's not somebody that I also struggled with at some point. Like, if it's only impulse control, it's not really attainable, and it's not enjoyable, and it's not passionate, and it's something that just, it doesn't feel right, but it works. So it's such a good thing to know that, like, just in case, I have a tool that I can whip out. But now, as we get further in Tanya, we're going to develop this idea more that really there's version 2. There's version A of Mal Shalit Al-Alev, which is impulse control. And then there's version B of Mal Shalit Al-Alev, which is to meditate. Okay, so now it's funny, because you don't necessarily, I never always like associated like Chabad, Hasidus with meditation. I don't know, I always thought it was like much more of an intellectual way of looking at it, where Breslov was a little bit more emotional, so I was like, wouldn't I meditate with emotion? But now I started realizing what the real key of meditation is, and we'll try to get to there, okay? So basically, we're saying that, so that's 16 and 17 is to meditate, to create emotions, and then connect it back to your intellect, okay? So we're saying one way, am I talking too fast? No, does it make sense? One way is putting the cap on it. Another way is, before you put the cap on it, start to meditate some ideas in order to like lift the cap a little bit. So let's try to understand how he explains it. So the Alter Rebbe says that first tool is natural. It's innate. It's like you have it within you. Okay? Any like neurotypical person, I would say, has that ability of impulse control. 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, it's not yet. But at a certain age, those tantrums are not appropriate. And then, like, let's say, like, you can't tell a 2-year-old, mommy's gonna be home in 5 minutes. What is 5 minutes? You know those kids who like say like, and then tomorrow, and then yesterday we went to Florida. I'm like, no, that was like a year ago. But in their mind, they don't have it yet. But as your brain develops, it is natural to have this ability of self-control, of impulse control, and you could do it perfectly. We could do that. But that tension, we said, that resentment, that it's not attainable for the rest of life is very, very sad. And that's not really the ideal way of serving Hashem, right? What do we say? We say, if it was Hashem, b'simcha. And then it says like, tachas shelo abadati b'simcha. Like, because you didn't serve me with simcha, that's why you're being punished. If you're only serving me because you have to, I mean, like, it's not a good feeling. It's not something that we want, and it's this unattainable stretch. It's like putting a rubber band, closing the soda cap. It's not good. So those are not good situations. That's not where we want to be. So we want to be able to, I'm seeing some people's messages. To be so cool, like, yes, okay. People are talking about this because it's very, very hard, like that struggle. Okay, so now this is going to bring us, this is the first internal tool that we have. Okay, the external tool, impulse control. Control your behaviors. Don't say Lashon Hara. Don't do that. Just be a good Jew. But even if I don't like to, even if you don't like to, like even if I really just want to say this thing, even if you really just want to, just don't. And you could do it, and it's a very empowering feeling. But now I want to give Hashem my insides also. So this concept of my insides, which is Moshe Alev, is changing yourself over time. Changing yourself over time to the point where it could almost even be decades. It could be a very, 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 very long time. But and my question, by the way, is that, like, if that's really the ultimate, then why weren't we taught that first?
Because I feel like not taught a lot of things.
We were not taught a lot of things.
Where do you want to start?
Where should we start? Let's say Tanya says, the Baal Tanya is giving us tools. He says the first one is impulse control. The second one is raise up your insides to connect closer to Hashem. But why don't you just tell me to raise up my insides first?
Because I feel like whenever you're young, you need impulse control because that's how you get into habit. And then as you have a little bit more like a development.
Speaking of developing your habits, she was able to control herself right now. Back in the day, like she's now 6. Back in the day, she would have walked in, started screaming, sit on my lap. Like that's happened before. You know, like I bring her sometimes with me to the city and like she'll sit on my lap and she'll be just crying the entire time. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't. But the fact that she was able to she saw what was happening and she was able to turn around, that was very, very hard for her, but that was control.
Exactly. Like right now, deep inside, she really wants to go upstairs. No, she wants to stay here and be. But like she needs to have that impulse control to be like, no, I don't understand why I'm not going to get emotional about it. My mommy knows I'm not supposed to be here, so I'm going to go upstairs.
Right.
And the same thing with the Yiddishkeit. Like a 3-year-old maybe doesn't want to watch Megalobster because they're like, oh, I'm not into it. But like, if we're just going to always like, if we're going to do the second tool first, he'll never do it. Because like, what 3-year-old is like, I'm passionate about watching Megalobster. Like,
right.
No.
It's funny, right? It's funny that you say that, by the way, because like 2 summers ago, I was learning the story of the lost princess, and the whole idea that the princess of the king, she ran away, she disappeared, she got lost, and one of the reasons why she was like kind of punished was because she lacked passion, and she's referred to as the princess of youth. That little kids have so much passion. Like little kids are so excited about Shabbos because like Shabbos party and Fruity Pebbles and whatever, and it's like by us, it's like to make a menu, challenge again, when should I put up my challah? Like it's almost like we lack that, but kids sometimes have it. But you're right, the kids need to lock in that cerebral concept of control yourself. Control yourself. I don't know why, control yourself. And it'll help you. So right, it has to come first, and then after that comes. So this trick of controlling yourself is not going to last forever. It's not going to work forever. So the main focus of Tanya is actually on the second version of Moshe Alev, which is change yourself over time. Okay, over time, you have to do it. It's called self-transformation, which Hashem wants because He wants our behaviors. He wants our passion. He wants fiery things. He does not want robots. He does not want the kids that stand online for the Ferris wheel waiting for hours and being quiet. He wants a little bit more life, right? So now we have to go to the emotion store. So if Hashem wants me to serve Him with my emotions, now we go back. Where do my emotions come from? From my intellect, right? They come from my head. So how am I supposed to get my head to produce the right things? If the way that I'm going to feel and serve Hashem is through my emotions, but my emotions come from here, so how do I change my intellect? How do I change the way that I think? By learning, and here's the tool, is by meditating, by thinking about Hashem. So we have to take 5 minutes. So this is tool number 1B, okay? 1A is impulse control. 1B is meditation. Now, sometimes you meditate and you don't realize that you're meditating. You ever do this? Like you hear a song and you're like, oh my God, this song reminds me of like when, whatever, like a moment. Like I have this thing with my head, like when Nachama was little, her health was like, it was like always like back and forth. She didn't eat, she was on a feeding tube, and it was like always like a scare of like going to the doctor, and like this actually is really what connected me to the aisle at first, for the first time. Like every time I would go to a doctor's appointment, like I always had a certain song or like a certain place, and like sometimes my mind like takes me to that place of like driving to appointments, and it was a sad time, and it was like a little bit, I don't want to say depressing, but like for me at that point it was, but like you know how you hear someone, you're like, oh my gosh, we used to play that in camp, or like, oh my gosh, I know that place, or you drive past a corner and you go down memory lane and you start reminiscing. This is something that I do sometimes, but like not in a way of like meditating, going down a sad road, because sometimes we could do that. As you could go down a sad lane for a little bit until you curve it back, but this type of meditation is meditating to the point where I'm just recognizing the greatness of Hashem. So I'll give an example. I mean, I'm trying. This is literally like new for me also. Okay, so my son, he's in, I don't even know what's high school called. I always mix up Mesifta, Mechina, Beis Medrash. I don't know. Mesifta. So he's in Mesifta. What? Mesifta, right, I know. I just saw an email that my son's going into 8th grade. It's like Mechina. I'm like, what's Mechina? Isn't that like a seminary? I don't know. So Mesifta, right? So he's going to Mesifta. So he starts yeshiva, and it's very, very hard for him to like miss school. So I'm like, we're going to do doctor's appointment day, which was probably not the smartest thing to do, but I scheduled like 9 appointments, like orthodontist, blood work, whatever, bone age x-ray, like all this stuff that I had to do. And I did it in one day. And in between, I was like, Hashem, just be, I literally, I'm like, Hashem, just be good to me. Like, let this not be a long wait. Let this one work out. Let me get there. Literally from 9 o'clock in the morning until 2 o'clock in the afternoon, we were just doing appointments. But within that traffic, I was like getting so frustrated. Obviously, my first thought is like, Faigy, don't do appointments back to back. But I was like, I'm going to try because this is what I need to do. But in the car, as I was in traffic, I was like, oh my God, we're going to miss this appointment. I'm looking online to see if it's okay. And then, of course, you call the office and like, if you show up 15 minutes late, you can't come. And I'm like getting all stressed out. And then I'm like, stop it. Actually, my son stopped me because like he knows I'm learning this. He's like, Ma, this is exactly where we need to be. Hashem wanted us to be. I'm like, you're right. Hashem is so good. Hashem, and in between, my daughter was coming home from camp, and like the buses were running late, and then they ended up coming early, and then they said it was in Costco, but then it was really by like Lawrence High School, whatever. I was like all over the place. But I stopped in between each doctor's appointment, each blood test, each thing, and saying, Hashem, this is incredible. The fact that you're letting this day happen, just talking about Hashem, or just thinking about Hashem, or in the waiting room. This I actually learned from Rabbi Yossi. He says, like, you're in the waiting room, right, and of a doctor's office. And like, it could be 25 minutes, it could be a half hour, depending like where you are. If it's Dr. Herman, it's 45 minutes. You know, like certain doctors are like, and if you're sitting there, and sometimes we're like, okay, fine, you see people taking out their tehillim, but he's like, sometimes you don't even have to take care of yourself. Sometimes just think like, Hashem is sitting here with me in this waiting room. It's like a practice. It's not an easy thing to say. I'm not going to say that I'm always like, oh, Hashem is here with me, waiting on this line, whatever. But you think about it, and then it starts to become normal. So 16 is telling us that even if you're not like full blown in love with Hashem at that moment, because like whether you're angry, you're frustrated, whatever, you can create something that's called like a pseudo emotion, which is in Hebrew a tvuna. A tvuna is, we should add this to the vocabulary list. A tvuna is an appreciation. A tvuna, actually, the shoresh comes from bina. It's less passionate than like a feeling of like, oh my gosh, I love Hashem in this moment. But like, it's an appreciation. So like, you know, people do gratitude journals, right? Like I started doing that like 3 years ago after I came back to work from COVID. And I was like, how am I ever doing this again in my life? And I started realizing like, this is not going to work. I can't walk around being bitter all day. And I can't just keep the soda cap on tight. I need to loosen the rubber band a little bit. Okay, I'm going to find greatness in something that happened yesterday. So write down 3 things. That was my meditation, which I didn't even realize. My meditation to create tvunos. Like a tvuna, which we'll explain what does it mean that it comes from Bina, is like, I don't fully understand, but I get it. I get why it's good for you. Like, I really, really like fried chicken, but like, I get why grilled chicken is better. I get it. Does that mean that I'm always going to go for the grilled chicken? No, sometimes I'm just going to take the fried chicken. But I understand why enough to the point where I got it, I get it's an important thing, I think it's worthwhile, I'm going to move forward with this. So like tvunos, which are just like they're like little emotions. If you add them up, they start to weigh a little bit more. So like, let's say this gratitude journal that I have is like, every day write down 3 things that you're grateful for. The second you write down 3 things that you're grateful for, even if it's the hardest day in the entire world and it's struggling, whatever, you automatically are able to look back at those things enough to stir up an emotion. Does that make sense? Okay, so this is how... Tvunas Halib. Yeah, yes. So, I know, that's something. We should be able to like, there's that, you know that?
Like a thesaurus.
It's like a concordatio, is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Remember those? My father had one of those in like a basement. It was like the coolest thing. Like you look up any word and it says like all the places it says the Torah.
Sure now.
It's for sure an app now.
Larry, that's like the
Oh, is that what it is? Oh, right. Remember, you used to always have to get those for school. I know. You know what I'm talking about? It was like orange and blue and
That was the dictionary.
the dictionary. Oh no, but we had like a concordazio, so we'll look it up. Tvunas halev. Yeah, that's what it is. It's like, this is how I want to live. I want to come to the conclusion that like I have these emotions. I really, really do appreciate Hashem. I can't say like every single day I love Hashem, because like a full blown emotion is like, if you ever felt like so much fear. Okay, there's this, I'm warning you all in the Five Towns, there's a guy on Central Avenue. He is going to be the death of us. Like, he's giving $150 not alternate side, sorry, that's Brooklyn, double park tickets on Central Avenue. If you are literally just dropping somebody off, he will catch you and you will get a ticket. The fear that I have sitting in the car and seeing him walking with, he's like this like big straw hat and he has like a fanny pack and a pen in his hand, and I'm like, oh, get out of the car quickly, he's coming. And I'm like, I literally like I drive away from him. But like what was it, 2 days ago, doctor's appointment day, he like, man, rolled down the window. The fear that I have is just it's so real. It's not a tuna, it's a real emotion. A tuna would be like, oh, I see the guy, it's okay, I get why he's doing it. Central Avenue is so annoying to drive down when everyone's double parked. But a real full-blown emotion, to get to that point of fear, to get to that point of love, like real love, is something that has to be really, really worked on. And that's not where we're up to yet. We're still in 16. We'll get there to develop real emotions to Hashem, but Hashem's saying, at least start with something. At least start with a tuna. Start with this pseudo emotion, enough to say, like, okay, I like this. I get this. Okay? This makes sense.
It's kind of like Rabbi Akiva and like the rock, like how the water penetrated the rock.
Oh yes, very, very slow. Yeah.
One drop,
And then it eventually made a hole. Exactly. Your tvunos will build up to create so much emotion to connect to Hashem. So even if it means davening brachos. So like for me, davening was always a struggle, like in the mornings, whatever. I started getting into my car. I leave a sitter in my car always, and I even daven brachos, sometimes I say it out loud. I'm like, I wish there was an app that I could sing along with. Like, I want to be like in a kid's classroom and singing like Moda Ani. I'm like, just please. We did that with Nishmas on the Thank You Hashem album, because I always like to say Nishmas. They have Chabad, they have davening out loud.
Yeah.
Really? Oh, sing-alongs, right? I'm like sing-alongs, but for adults, you know what I mean? Like, for me, I'm always in the car, so it's like I want to like do it, but without sitting a sitter. But then like, so that would be a tuna. But like real full emotion would be opening up my sitter and like pouring out my heart. But some days I can't get to that point. So Hashem's like, it's okay. Build these tunos and that will make you, okay? So, and what's cool is that what Hashem does, this is a concept in the Gemara. It says that Hashem is, you know, the concept where like someone's like, oh, I need a ride. Anybody looking for a ride to the mountains, and then you get a ride, but then someone responds to you, oh, I can also drive whatever, your daughter. She's always looking for rides to Brooklyn and the mountains, whatever. Now it's Lakewood. So she's like, and somebody else responds to me at the same time, and I'm like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. She actually got a ride. What happens to that person who offered the ride? She still gets a mitzvah, right? Because Hashem, there's this concept that, I want to just see if I wrote down the pasuk. Hashem is, machshava tova, HaKadosh Baruch Hu mitztaref l'maisa. Hashem takes the thought and he connects it to the mitzvah. You had the intention of driving somebody to the hospital, but they got another ride. But Hashem says, even if you had the intention, I will connect it to the deed. Okay? So what Hashem does is Hashem is mitztaref. Hashem takes, he combines the thought or the tuna, and he takes that and he makes it a real emotion. So we don't have to worry so much if we're like, oh my God, I'm not in love with Hashem at this moment. Because right now maybe I'm angry at Hashem. Maybe now that's not working. But all I have to do, all my job is to create enough feelings that I feel appreciated by Hashem, or I appreciate Hashem, or I understand. Like I'm going to go off for a second. Like have you ever thought there's like a mitzvah and you're like, oh, actually it makes sense, that mitzvah. Like that really works. Like I'm trying to think, like Shabbos, right? Okay, let's take Shabbos. Like Shabbos is like, oh my God, there's like so many halachos and so many malachos and so many things that we need to do and like whatever, and I could be so stressed out and I could just connect to Shabbos through 1A, which is like, okay, this is what Hashem wants to do, even if it's not my own will, but it's Hashem's desire, so I'm working to align myself, so I'll just put the cap on and I'll keep Shabbos. Or I could be like, wow, like, it's so good to disconnect for 24 hours. I appreciate it so much. The real emotion would be like, the whole world was created for Shabbos. But like, I'm not there yet. So I'll start with saying, I get it, 24 hours, I can focus on my kids, I can relax, I can read a book, I could take a walk, right? I don't have to go in the car. I like started like hating to go in the car. I'm like, I just want to walk everywhere. But like, it's an appreciation. It's a tuna. It's not a full-blown emotion. But we learn here that Hashem connects those tunos. Hashem says it's okay. You could start there, and it will affect your body. That tfuna will be a little bit of giving Hashem part of your body. We said we don't want to just give Hashem our mind. We don't want just impulse control all day. We also want to give him part of us. So that's the idea. So real love and real fear on the most deepest gut level takes tremendous time. Like people when you get married, I love you. But you don't love that person that you marry. You barely know the person you marry, right? I feel like in my next lifetime, I teach college in the city, but like I'm like in my next lifetime, we have to like do like full-blown college classes for like regular girl. What's regular? Who's regular? I'm just saying girls who grew up like, let's say religiously and then go into that, like you don't love anybody. Okay, you don't. Maybe you love yourself, maybe you love the way he looks, maybe you love the way that you looked at your wedding, but like there's no real love. It has to develop. But you have enough tunos, you have enough pseudo emotions to connect to that person and to like that person. So it's kind of like a nice thing. But then we learn now that Hashem says, just keep building your tunos, keep meditating, keep thinking and appreciating me and appreciating your things in life, and I'll just connect it to the myself. Wow, oh my gosh, today's such a gorgeous day. Thank you, Hashem, it's such a good day. And by the way, that's kind of like I started thinking, like, I don't know what the whole Thank You Hashem movement is, but I know that it got me to appreciate things much more. And since I started appreciating things so much more, I'm like, oh, my life changed. But like how? Because Hashem takes those appreciations and he connects it to a mice and he makes it like it's the most real thing ever. So it's like almost like a magic trick. It's a tool, but it's such a cool tool. I don't have to work so hard. I just have to keep developing it. And that's where like consistency comes in, right? I'm going to consistently do it. I'm going to consistently appreciate. And the more I appreciate, the more Hashem connects it to it. So it's not just controlling your thoughts, it's also tapping into your emotions, even though it's probably on the lowest level of emotions, I would say, but it's still something. Does that make sense? Do you have a moment in your life where you appreciated something and then you saw like things growing from it? Yeah? You want to give an example?
I think everything, especially like for me, keep it up and aim was always a struggle.
Okay.
And then I said, okay, no, like I'm so appreciative. Like these are like you have your parents is like they were like the diamonds that were given to you. Like these are the perfect parents for you. And then once you really think about it, you're like, oh, and then the outgrowth of respecting them just comes more naturally.
Wow.
Because
Wow. No,
You
that's
also gave
amazing.
the example of the child that you put the most work into, right? So that's the flip side of what she's saying.
Oh, right.
You love the most.
You love the most the ones that you work the hardest for, right? It is. It's both. It's like, it's definitely slow. This is a slow process. This is not a quickie. This is not like a quick fix. We'll see in 18 to 25 is like emergency. Like emergency, I want to control my emotions or I want to tap into my emotions. 18 to 25 is that. But 16 and 17 is like Rabbi Akiva, that example, just going slow. So what does Hashem do? Hashem takes that abstract notion of like, oh, it's such a beautiful day outside, right? And then he connects it to a mitzvah and a good thing. So that very physical act of a mitzvah that is out there, that's connected on the highest level, Hashem takes your like, oh, it's gorgeous outside. And he connects it to something. And then you start to see. So the impact is that like sorry, one second, I'm getting ahead of myself. The fact that I'm able to do something very, very small that could impact the world or impact my surroundings is a very exhilarating feeling. It's a very powerful tool. And the impact is almost as great, if I can say this, as a tzaddik when he does a mitzvah. Because what's a tzaddik when he does a mitzvah? Tzaddik is somebody who has perfect insides and outsides, right? His inside, his feelings are perfect, his outsides are perfect. If I take my tunos and Hashem connects it to a mitzvah and to something good, I'm basically at tzaddik level. Almost, right? I can experience it, I can taste it. The tzaddik doesn't have to work so hard, and neither do I have to work so hard. So it's like a win-win, you know what I mean? The tzaddik doesn't have to work so hard because the tzaddik has perfect insides. But the Benoni here at this moment, who's able to get enough tunos to connect it, doesn't have to work so hard, but starts to see it. And the more he starts to see it, the more it develops, the greater and the better he gets at it. okay? So he does the right thing, and there's an incredible emotion attached to it, even though I didn't feel so much. So that is the next tool. Tool number 1, impulse control. 1A, impulse control, control yourself, keep it tight. Tool number 2 is start to find little moments of appreciation, create tunos, and with that, Hashem will take care of the rest, right? You know, like, Pischoli, Pesach, like, just do a little opening, and Hashem will open it up and make it grand for you. So that new tool is very, very exciting. So now, let's talk about a second for like meditating on the greatness of Hashem. Because like I'm saying it very casually, like I'm in the car and in traffic, I'm able to meditate about Hashem. But really, like Shais Taub, he says it like very, very straight up. Like he says like, this is a practice, like when you're cutting vegetables, and when you're in the car, and when you're in traffic, and when you're in school, and when you're studying, whatever you're doing, take a moment and like, he says like, think about Kriyas Yam Sov. Like for 1 second. Like when do you think about Kriyas Yam Sov other than like Shvi Shal Pesach, right? Like, or like if you have to make an art project, or like if you're, like for me, Kriyas Yam Sov would be like, okay, my table decor for the Seder, I'm going to like run a little water thing, and we're going to all do Kriyas Yam Sov. We did this, we were in Orlando, and we're like, okay, everyone come outside to the pool, right? That's when I think about Kriyas Yam Sov. But like, what about if you think about it in the mornings, or in the afternoons, or when you're sitting in traffic? If you meditate on that desire to like think about the greatness of Hashem, your thoughts and your emotions will become more aligned with Hashem. How are you? You can sit right here, okay? So that's internal transformation. Internal transformation comes by just thinking about Hashem. And what chapter 17 comes to tell us, which is so cool, and it's such it takes this burden off of like Yiddishkeit a little bit, is that it's doable. It is doable. Stop thinking that, oh my gosh, I can't do this. Because there are people who say I can't do this, and those are people who like, I don't know, I hate this word, go off the derech. Right? Like, what does it mean off the derech? Like, well, I don't know, but whatever that is, it's people who struggle with Yiddishkeit are people who say it's not doable. But what if it is? So chapter 17 comes to like give us a hug and say, no, it's okay, you can do this. That whole idea, all the way back from the beginning, that we learned that you have thoughts, and your thoughts affect your emotions, and then you can now take your emotions and you can connect it back to your thoughts, is a real tool, and it's very doable, and it just comes with practice, so it's very exciting. Then, this is the last thing that I'll leave you with, because I see we're like starting to go over here. There's this concept where, and it says it in Tanya, it says, Kikar ve'lach davar ma'od, right? What is that line? What does that phrase mean? The mitzvah is very close, right? Kikar ve'lach davar ma'od. And then what's the end of the sentence? Beficha levavcha lasoso. Right, okay. So, she grew up in Israel. Well, not really. So,
Where is that from?
even though, I'm like, it's a song. Kikar ve'lach davar ma'od, leficha levavcha lasoso. I'm like, where's that from? Like, you know.
Like the story.
We need a congregación. No, actually, the Tanya quotes it. Okay. So, Kikar ve'lacha davar ma'od, leficha levavcha lasoso, enjoy, so what does it mean, lasos? So what do the words mean? Kikar ve'lacha davar ma'od, it's very close to you. Tati. So what does it mean, Kikar ve'lacha davar ma'od? Something is very close to you. There's a song, besides Eitan Katz, there's another one, Chaim Guri, which we're doing a whole album with Thank You Hashem. He has a whole song about you don't know how good it is, and it's so close. Like, you don't know how close you are to it being so good. Like right now, let's say like you're struggling with something, right? Or let's say, and it's like, I don't know when I'm going to get that. Let's say somebody's struggling to have a child, right? And like, it could be so hard for 10 years, 5 years, 6 years, 6 months, whatever it is. You have no idea if you open the door to the next appointment, and it could be that you have everything that you need, right? Dating-wise. Dating for so long, you have no idea the second, you could open up a door and you could meet a guy and that could change your entire life. So we have to always think like that. Kikar ve'lacha davar ma'od, it is so close. And what do we say? Bilficha is your mouth, bilevavcha in your heart, la'asoso. What is la'asoso? What does la'asos mean? To do it. So the way that you do it. So it's like kind of like this statement of Kikar ve'lacha davar ma'od. It's very, very close to you. It's very attainable, right? How attainable is it? So attainable that my 6-year-old daughter could do it. She now can control herself from sitting here next to me. That is how attainable it is, right? I actually think that at 6 you start to develop like a whole nother set of like of reflexes. Yeah, for sure. Up until then, I don't think it counts. Like, when is it age appropriate, right? We say that. So this concept of it's very close to you, it's very attainable, and it's beficha, it's in your mouth, bilevavcha, in your heart. And what does it mean it's in your heart? What does it mean it's in your heart? I thought it's so hard to change my emotion and to change what you like. And Hashem says, no, it's not so hard, because I will take it and I will connect it to a mitzvah, and it's going to be so easy. So it's doable, right? Lasoso comes to qualify and comes, the word lasoso comes to give it context that says it's very easy to change your inner emotions, to tip the scales enough to get you to do the right things, and that's just by collecting tfunos. So you're gonna meditate, and you're gonna go into the zone, and you're gonna have emotions, and you're gonna give birth to emotions, and Hashem's gonna take it off from there. Hashem's gonna take it from there. Hashem is gonna connect it to lasoso. Hashem is going to make machshava tova, right? Kemaisa. That like you have a good thought, and I'm gonna connect it. So you're gonna meditate, you're gonna bring emotions into being. You're gonna say, oh my gosh, today's such a gorgeous day. Hashem, you keep such good weather. I know it's cold. I have like a little chill in the air. I'm just more about like the sweater weather than like, the weather.
Keep the kids busy.
I know, keep the kids busy, right? I know. Because they're like, let's do Balance You. I'm like, can we say that for like the winter? Let's just be outdoor as much as possible. But the concept tvuna, we said, comes from the same root of bina, right? Tvuna is tes vav, right? So it's the same tes, not vav, base, right? Tvuna, bina, right? I have a daughter, bina. So bina is an intellectual faculty. Remember, where does bina come from? Bina is the left side of your brain. We said chachma is this idea that I want to do something, and then bina takes it and actualizes it. By the way, another way to like think of bina is literally a womb. It carries the thought. It carries the chachma. Bina means, okay, so it's from bina. So bina is really an intellectual faculty, but we're saying with your emotions, you can create tvunos. So your emotions now, the little pseudo-emotions that you create, affect your intellect. So it's the first tool that we have. We see that it gives birth, right, with chachma, bina, together through das creates emotions. And now we're saying through your emotions, bring it back to Hashem. Bring it back to your intellect, okay? So basically, to have full-blown emotions of like love and hate and anxiety and whatever, all those emotions, it takes a lifetime, right? It really does. We hear stories of like big tzaddikim who had so much love, like Shais Taub gives this example of like Reb Levi Yitzchak Mibraditchev, like he was so excited to like shake the lulav and esrog that he couldn't sleep all night, and then on his way to shul he was running and he tripped and he dropped his esrog and the pitam broke. Like, to have emotions like that, like the morning of Sukkot, I wake up and I'm like, I hope it didn't rain, so I don't have to wipe down all the chairs. I hope my kids' art projects didn't get ruined. I get why we have to go out into a sukkah. It's like, I get it, but like I'm not feeling that jumping out of bed to go shake the lulav and esrog. But enough for it to be lasso. So Hashem says it's okay. I will make it work for you. So now who can do this method? We said Reb Levi Yitzchak is like the highest level of emotion. What about us? Can we do it? Absolutely. We can totally do it. So it's karov elecha. It's very, very close. It's right here. It's in your thoughts, beficha, lovavcha, in your heart, and in your actions. Lasso so. Those, by the way, those words beficha, lovavcha, lasso so are like are the levushim, right? It really is the levushim. It's thought, speech, and action. So it's like Hashem, I can think about you just for a little bit, and I'll stir up an emotion enough for you to make it into actualizing something real. So now you take over from here. I'll do as much as I can. So really, anybody who has a brain and has has an emotion factory can do it. There are people who unfortunately can't. But like,
I think a lot of like things in life, like that even just as like I think manifesting, right? Like people talk about manifesting or whatever. Like,
right.
What's the first step to manifesting? You have to have what do you want? Do you want something? You can't create something if you have a desire for it. So it's like
It's
the whole concept
very
of,
much
like,
ratzon.
you
Yeah.
have to have is because I need to have a ratzon. You have to open it. You can't
Right.
open something if you don't have a ratzon. So I think
Maybe
like
it's-
a lot of this, if you're saying it's doable, and like the people who don't think it's doable is because do they have a ratzon? Like,
Right.
Do you not like I have a do you really have a ratzon? Like,
Right.
Once you really have a ratzon, Hashem does it for you. That's
There's a
why-
line, I'm pretty sure it's from Rabbi Nachman. It's also another Thank You Hashem song. Devorah Schwartz sings it. Yesh Adam, Einad, now you know the type of song you have to like sing it, that in order to get the words. Birega sha'adam rotzeh hu gam yumchal. That the second somebody wants something, he also has the ability to do it. Yesh adam shelo rotzeh. There is a person who doesn't want, right? There's somebody who just doesn't want. Yesh adam shelo rotzeh, yesh adam. that anybody who has a will can make it happen. So that's the first thing. And no, and it's true because a lot of Tanya is having the understanding what will is. And then we're like, oh, well, I have no free will. Guess what? You do. You really, really do. Because we learned that back a while ago that you do have free will. So the mommy, in a way, is the bina, and the bina is the womb, and that's the tunos. Chachma is like this hyper condensed thought of I want to create something, right? You're going to make that minion app, so you're going to ping people so we can get it, which is amazing, right? Anybody need a minion, and then it's almost like this was something we wanted to do a while ago, like an app for play dates. That you put yourself on this app that which kids are available for play dates, for Shabbos. Let's just do it for Shabbos, not during the week, right? And then you see who's available, and then you could just click that person, right? So I have this idea, right? I want to unfold it. It's just this concentrated thought. It's amazing. Bina is the womb that carries it. And then the potential actualizes in the womb. And then Bina Yisera is really what's given to woman, is what develops it. That's feminine. So what's Das? What's that focus? The focus is the relationship that you have to take, the Chachma and the Bina, to create something. And in order to have children, you need to have this profound emotion. Okay, so that's this idea. Don't worry, you'll catch up at the end, and we're wrapping it up. Okay, so now let's just understand one last thing of chapter 17. Okay. Yeah. She has to go. Okay, so hold on one second. I want to skip to the end of chapter 17. Okay, she has to go home. Okay, so now and this actually has to do with what you were saying about the will, this concept of a thought. So really, what is a thought then? What are these thoughts? It's like a trick question. Really, these thoughts are actually, thoughts become behaviors, right? Remember we said that you have 3 levushim. You have action, speech, and thought. Action makes sense as a levush. Speech also makes sense as a levush. But thoughts, how could that be? I can't stop certain thoughts coming from my head, right? But I don't know if I ever gave this example. This story that obviously Rabbi Taub said. I'm not trying to remember if I said the story, where it was a person who was struggling with his thoughts. He was having did we say this? He was having, let's say, improper thoughts, right? This guy was having improper thoughts, and he went to his Rebbe, and he said, what should I do? I have all these constant improper thoughts. I want to stop them. Why is Hashem giving them to me? What should I do about it? So he said, go travel to this town. You're going to go meet with this person, and he's going to tell you exactly what to do. So he travels, and he gets to this guy's house, and it's Erev Shabbos, and he's knocking on the door, and nobody's answering. And he keeps knocking on the door, and he hears people in the house. You know when this happens? He's I know there are people in the house, but they're just not opening the door. This is so weird. So he's it's getting close to Shabbos. I don't know what to do. So he's he went to the shul in the neighborhood. He went to the neighborhood shul, and he sat there, and he's oh my gosh, maybe somebody will offer him a meal. And then he saw there were some schleppers in the shul also eating the Friday night meal there. So he did. He woke up in the morning. He was in shul again, and he was so confused. And he saw this guy that he was supposed to go meet with, and he's why is he ignoring me? Later on Shabbos, Shal Shaddis, he's hi, Rabbi Yid, how are you? Do you want to come over to my house for Havdalah? And he was this is so weird. He ignored me the whole Shabbos. I don't understand. Okay, fine. So I'll come for Havdalah. Beautiful Havdalah, singing, everything. And then he starts talking to him, and he's can I tell you something? And he's yeah, sure. He's it's so weird. I came to your house on Shabbos, and I was knocking, and I clearly heard there were people in the house, and I feel you may have heard me, but you ignored me the whole Shabbos, but I was knocking on your door. And I was there. So why didn't you answer me? Now you're bringing me into your house with all glory. He's the Rebbe sent me to your house to find out how to control my thoughts. And he's that's exactly it. You could have thoughts knocking on your door, but you don't have to open the door. So you could have racing thoughts of okay, I'll tell you my thoughts from last night of anxiety of school, right? And schedules. I'm restocking my house and all that stuff. And kids coming home from camp, and it's oh my gosh, how am I going to get through the next 2 weeks? And I went to Adventureland and David Buster's and here already. And oh my, and it's you can let that keep you up all night.
What do I do today?
Speaking of, what are we going to do today? We're gonna make a plan. We're gonna make an activity. But you don't have to let them in. You allow them to. You can open up the door, and you could be up an entire night flooded with these thoughts. Or you could hear them, and you could just close the door and say, I'm not letting these thoughts interrupt me. You can't control your thoughts. But when you do control your thoughts, then it becomes a behavior. Because you're the thought overall is something that can enter me or it could not enter me. It's a very cool concept. That it brings us back to free will. That we will have thoughts, but we don't always have to open up the door for them. And then you practice Molchal Lake. So one is override my heart. I have no emotions. Put the tight thing on. Hashem says I have to keep Shabbos. I will keep Shabbos. Hashem says I have to keep kosher. I will keep kosher until I burst. So I'm going to do that for a little bit. And then once I put the lid on it, I will slowly, indirectly influence my heart with building up these emotions. So by creating emotions and by choosing the things that I want to think about and the things that I like, I'll get better at it. It's like that example of the tomato. I don't like tomatoes, but if someone gave me $1 million at the end of the year, I will eat the tomatoes. If I say eat the tomato right now and like the tomato, that's a tzaddik. A tzaddik doesn't have any problem with his emotions. He's like, okay, fine, you gave me a tomato, I'll eat it. Even though if I don't like it, but you know what? Now I like it because you like it, I like it. That's very hard. Then saying at the end of the year with $1 million, I'll eat it. That's tfunos. And then there's like this in between where like, okay, you have till the end of the year, just figure out how to like tomatoes. So some people will start eating tomatoes every single day in order to like it. And some people maybe the last day will just be like, okay, I'm going to figure it out. The idea is that we're not tzaddikim. We're not able to like things that we don't like immediately. But over time, we start to like it. It's like coffee. Like when I was a kid, I never liked coffee. You develop a taste for coffee, now I love coffee, right? I do it to my kids very early, which is probably a mistake. But like, how many tunos do we need? Enough for it to be lasoso. Enough for it to be a real thing. Get yourself enough that you're doing it, that the motivation is coming from you, and not because I'm doing it because Hashem said so. And you could do that. It's an emotional change, but it's very, very slow. And we do that through meditation. It takes time. Like he said, when you're chopping vegetables, when you're in traffic, when you're in the car, wrap your mind around infinity. Talk about big concepts of Tchias HaNisim with your kids. Talk about Kriyas, think about Kriyas Yamsuf, and that sounds really, really good and very, very interesting. And then you excite yourself to the point where it gets you to move. Now, I'm going to stop here, but I want to tell you then the next few chapters, 18 through 25, we're going to learn the emergency route to fix your emotions. 16 and 17 is very slow. 16 and 17 is like, do it over time. Every day. I'm telling you, I'm writing a gratitude journal for 3 years. I'm just still collecting tunos. Like, I'm not, like, I don't know if I'm fully, there are moments where I hit like a peak and it feels great, but it's slow. But now, let's say I want to do it much faster. Let's say I want to just be on fast forward, which I honestly think that like we're in the times where things are moving faster. So it's like, I want to learn 18 through 25, which is fascinating, which is finding latent emotions that you already have. Don't create new emotions. Don't start liking new tomatoes. Find the tomato within you. Like find something within you that was already connected to Hashem, and that's what we'll do next week.
Has a question?
Yeah.
Were you saying, I don't remember this correctly, that tvunos is like the first step of meditation?
Yeah. Tunos are like fake emotions. They're not fake emotions. They're like mini emotions. They're like,
What are we going to do after this?
we're going to figure out what to do. They're like small things they're small, just moments of appreciation. It could be 1, 2, 3 things a day, but that's your meditation time. Then it will fully develop over time. It could take a decade. It could take decades. But if you want the emergency route, if you want to connect to Hashem very fast, we're going to just like pass by the slow dripping and we're just bring a whole waterfall to that rock through 18 to 25. Whereas when it's like, it's like to be continued. That's where you find things that you have already within you and you can get there faster. Okay? Make sense? Good. Okay, I'm going to end this here. It's like, it's so crazy. I went back to work after COVID after a year and a half. I walked into the office and we had to wear masks. And